All right. Hey, 80,000 hours of strategy distilled into simple frameworks. Today's guest, Stacey Bullman, I'm not mad at you, shows you how to future proof your business and skip the costly mistakes. Stacey, welcome to the Go for CEO program. How are you?
I'm good, John. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, hey, look, our Go for CEO community is always very interested at the ideation stage at the beginning of our podcast. So, would love to kind of go on like, I'm not mad at you. All right. I got to get that right. I'm not mad at you. And it starts to stick and flow and grow, right? So 15, 20 years ago, like you said, off camera, this is the name you came up with. So tell us a little bit about the ideation, what you were at, corporate background, all that good stuff.
Sure. The corporate background is I spent 25 years in corporate America working for the Fortune 100 companies. And I say that's where I learned processes and systems of the Fortune 100 companies. And as you notice, those companies don't fail. And so we are taught, what ultimately I believe 1% of the population will ever know in terms of forecasting, understanding data, and how to use that for sales and marketing and how to run successful businesses that ultimately last forever. So I took that experience and in 2015 started ideating. I'm not mad at you, and had mentors and guides and had a brainstorming session to create the name for the company. And I had a good friend ask me, like, tell me how this happens. How do you help people? Like, how are people coming to you for help at this point in your life? And at this point, it was largely personal things, and I told him, people come over to my couch, they're crying, they've broken up with somebody or whatever's happened, and you nurse them back to health. And 2 days later, 2 weeks later, they come back and they're like, "You're gonna be mad at me." And right as I say that, my friend says, "That's the name of your company." It's like, "I'm not mad at you." Because ultimately, like, I would never be mad at those people. It didn't make any difference to me that they maybe went back, with that person or did something that was incongruent, to be fair, with them, which is the reason that always sort of put that projection onto me is that I was going to be mad at them. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going to sleep really good tonight. So when he suggested that was the name, I really thought he was crazy because, as I said, I did come from corporate America and I thought it was pretty out there. But it fits my personality. And now I have so many stories that it aligns with the company and the work we've done. We obviously come into companies when it's an invasive process because we like to work quickly and we are working with numbers and their P&Ls. So it's pretty invasive areas. And, we're usually telling them areas that they can be better. And it's a leader who's run a successful company and done things well. So when you're sitting there telling them they could do better, I'm not mad at you. Don't be mad at me. But I have areas for you to be better. So the company and the name have taken on their own life, but it is me at the core and my personality, I think, from the time I was born.
I love it. So let's go deeper on that, right? Obviously, a lot of people kind of get cold sweat, wake ups in the morning with ideas. Hopefully, it's good ideas, and they start writing it down, or they just always had this thing tugging at them that they want to do, or they spend 25, 30 years maybe in the wrong career, but all of a sudden have an epiphany like, hey, I want to be able to do my own thing, right? In fact, I just saw a Matthew McConaughey thing that he was going to be a lawyer apparently at 18 years old. His family was pushing him that way because he was so good at, discussing and having debate. But he woke up one day and wanted to become an actor, right? And that's kind of what he did. So in this phase of not only finding a brand name and the things that you were going to do, but while you were at corporate America and these personal touches and feelings and things that you were helping people with, what were some of the things that you started to do? Okay, I got a name. Now what? Like, what am I going to be actually consulting in? Because you knew P&L and strategy and some of the financials, was that the specific area? And then did you have an avatar that you thought of that you could market to?
I thought in the beginning I would work with consumer product companies because I had spent so much time in that industry. And one thing I tell people is that we generally think our Rolodex is going to be a lot more powerful than it ends up being. And I don't know if the younger generation is going to know what a Rolodex is, but we think that our contact list is going to be more powerful when we start our businesses and that's going to lead to a lot of business for us. And while they're supportive and they're kind and they usually will wish you well, when you actually ask them to spend money, it's not as that contact list shrinks.
Yeah.
And so, you know, all of a sudden I really wasn't, I never had any specific industry other than I thought I would get consumer product companies to work with. But the first client I had was construction. And I've literally worked with from the robotics to pet facilities to podcast studios to janitorial services, you name it. At this point, we've worked with industries across the board. But yeah, I think I was surprised that I did not have more in my, background, but that wasn't really necessary because the principles that we are consulting on are blocking, tacking, ABCs, business development, forecasting, financials, HR, all the hats that you wear as a CEO, that where I'm working with the small to mid-sized businesses, those people generally have their expertise in the field that they have a company doing. So for instance, the construction company, which was the company I worked with, that made sense now that you think about it. Maybe at the time when I was creating and ideating the company, that wasn't obvious to me at that point. I did think I would probably appeal to more small to mid-sized businesses. While I thought maybe I would get a great opportunity in consumer products with that contact list, I still thought that where I was heading with the consulting and my processes and my knowledge would probably be more sellable, and my avatar was going to be the small to mid-sized business. And that's where it went with the construction companies in the beginning. And then it trickled into pretty much, I mean, I literally have touched so many different industries over the past 10 years, and it's been fun. And, not much in consumer products, and that hasn't been a detriment or anything. And I think that's a good example. I will say I have a client that's an engineer, and he came from the oil and gas industry. And so when he started his company and we were ideating his company, he thought for sure he would be doing engineering for the oil and gas industry. And I remember telling him on our first meeting, like, construction. Because at that point, I was 6 or 7 years into the company, and I had been in Texas, where I'm from, and same as this company. And I thought, a lot of the construction projects that we work on require engineers.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, his website was tailored to oil and gas, and it had, all the oil and gas equipment. And literally, probably 6 months after we started it, construction. And now I believe 99% of the business is construction. And so you have to be
Wow.
really, really fluid when you do start a business for yourself and go where it goes. And I tell people this for years, even when I consulted people in the consumer product space, when I was working for those companies, don't fall in love with your product. Do not fall in love with your product. And I've had lots of kickback when I say that to people. Lots of people are like, what? I don't believe you. I don't believe in that. I'm like, I understand it is a visceral reaction to say, like, that's crazy. But I will say this, if you want to be successful, like the Fortune 100 companies, you don't fall in love with your product. If Walmart was to tell you that you need a package to be yellow versus blue, are you telling me that you're not going to change the package to be yellow so that you can sell 2 million units?
Hmm.
Really? Really? So I challenge those people that are either in the ideation space or already started their company, or even, a mature space. You have to be fluid, and especially in 2025, and you need to look at gaps in the market, places where you truly offer a value proposition or a point of differentiation. And if you're currently in your market and you can't clearly articulate to the consumer what your point of differentiation is or your value proposition, what are you doing?
Yeah, you're
What-
dead in the water in that stage, right? Especially at the beginning, right? Because there's no clear message. So it sounds like you were kind of one of those pioneers 10, 15 years ago, even though you were a corporate Fortune 100, CPG, executive type person, and in that space, you sought out, kind of a fractional CMO, sounds like fractional CFO type thing.
Yeah,
And,
fractional
and
CEO, fractionals, exactly.
yeah,
All the fractionals. I'm all
yeah,
the
yeah.
fractionals. Yes.
Yeah, so you pioneered, and over the last 10 years, especially, I've heard telling, I work with, and my other hat of business of commercial banking, it's always interesting. I I work with these fractionals and they get insights because they're in these companies, small to medium-sized business, right? That maybe doing 5, 10, 15, 30 million gross revenue, but they're not knowing, okay, what area of my business, what silo, right? Is it in this space? Is it in supply? Is it in demand? Is it in operations? Where am I failing? Is it in my financials that I don't know how to forecast? So, all right, so you're in it, right? You get this construction company, you kind of in a totally different industry all of a sudden. What are some of the things that you started to do to really become, I'm not mad at you, consulting? Like what area did you pick in that first relationship to give you some guidance of how you were going to consult this business? Ooh, I think it's lost. 2, 1.
Yeah, I think the very first place we start with almost every single client is, first off, we start with the P&L. So we look at that separately and individually, but we start in a marketing area and we create the story. It's the very first thing we do. And I think a lot of our clients think we're crazy when we're sitting there spending about an hour and a half on what I call a message map. And it defines the what, how, who, where, and why of any product, brand, or service. And as I said, it is a very confusing place for a lot of companies, especially as you said, they're in the brand new stage or in the startup phase, to be spending, like I said, 2 hours crafting this message, shall you say. But as I said earlier, if you can't clearly define your value proposition and your point of differentiation, you have nothing to sell. You have absolutely nothing to sell. Even if you have this widget, if you can't tell me why this widget is valuable and it's different than somebody else's widget, you don't have this to sell. It's fiction. And that is a place that I will say 99% of the leaders that I work with, the business owners that I deal with, that's not where they think their first time should be spent. They're belaboring logos, email addresses, registration, which is all the stuff you do have to do. But back to, if you haven't defined the value proposition, right away and why you're doing what you're doing, I think that's also really critical because people buy stories. I mean, obviously there's demand purchasing on things that we have to have, right? We have to go buy fuel or we have to go buy certain things. So that's just a matter of what's the closest or top of mind or whatever the case may be. But for those of us in these other spaces, for you, the other spaces you play in, myself, you really have to have a story that, because there's a million consultants out there. There's a million, right? And some are good and some are bad. And there's every range in between. So what does I'm not mad at you do and why do we do it? I mean, we really care about making people and companies better. We've exceeded all of our hopes and dreams. We are living the dream. Everything I wanted to start this company for, I have achieved. I now live in Tulum or anywhere in the world I want to. And this was pre-COVID that this was my plan. COVID didn't do anything but accelerate my opportunities. And I think that, I believe and I really think at the end of the day, that's probably one of the biggest variables as well, is besides all the tactical blocking and tackling, is you got to go into it with believing that whatever you're doing, that you really have a reason for doing it, that you really offer something valuable to the world or to your avatar, and go do it and follow the
Yeah.
steps, because the steps are easy. The steps are the corporate American. You do not deviate. Like, business development is business development is business development. ABC, you must spend money to make money. Like, there's no deviation in the actual rules that are business 101. It's just back to, does the average small to mid-sized business owner know all those things, or were they ever taught those things, or did they start a construction company because their father had a construction company, their grandfather had a construction company, and they're very good at construction? That's usually that person. So why would they be good in any of these other areas? And as I say, when you start a business, you're usually only going to get to do the thing that you like the most about 10% of the time. The other 90% of the time is going to be business development, sales, marketing, finance, HR, accounting, meetings, taxes, all sorts of other things that don't include you going out to the site to make sure that they're building the property correctly. In fact,
That's a huge point.
you'd be wisely told to not go to that property. If you're running this effectively, you're never going to that property.
No, it's a huge point. That's the whole, working in and working on the business scenario. And those of us that are in that kind of space of being maybe someone at the table that is an advisory position or something that's consultative, can see that. But a lot of business owners don't see the forest from the trees, right? Because like you said, they're focused on their service and the product that they develop, the thing that they love, the chef, of the restaurant that doesn't know how to run a restaurant, stuff like that. So let's get nitty gritty. Obviously, one of the things that you have on your website and the boldness that you come out with is that you get down and dirty into the nitty gritty. So let's share with them, this first client that you had. What were some of the things that you initially saw, if you can recall, or if you want to do someone recent in the P&L, right? As a commercial banker myself, outside of the YouTube Go for CEO podcast, I look at that P&L and I go, ooh, okay, here's a balance sheet indifference, the income statements coming in, where are the expenses, those type of things. But from your word of mouth, right, or your viewpoint, what's the best way that you look at and then go, okay, here's 2 or 3 nuggets that I want to detail and showcase for you?
I will give you an example of one of the first occasions that I remember the P&L leading me to a solution before I'd even really had the first official meeting with the client. Because once I was about a year or two into the company, I immediately said, if I'm going to work with you, you'll send me your P&Ls before we even really have our first meeting so that I can get the P&Ls in the form I'd like and do my research and my homework. And so by the time we got on our first call, what I had noticed in the P&L was that his cost for labor, he was a SEO company, so he had project managers, shall you call them, and he had 2. And there was a formula for how many, your payroll shouldn't be more than 30 to 50% of your sales. And so his payroll at that time was about 70%. So the first call we are on, I have to tell him, you have to fire somebody. And, like I said, I had spoken with this person for about 3 or 4 months before he became a client. So it wasn't exactly, right away. But the P&L, it wasn't some magic. It didn't take me long to figure it out. I went straight to the payroll category and said, okay, what percentage of sales is this? Because that's back to one of those very standard basic 101 things you do with the P&L. And I also tell people when I'm coaching and consulting the companies is it can be intimidating when you are looking at a profit and loss statement and you haven't been guided or mentored, or no one, your accountant or your CPA doesn't actually take you through that, which in my opinion, they should, but they will tell you they're not there to do that. In fact, that's not their role. Which again, they look at it every year, they're responsible, but they don't actually look at the same 5 or 6 columns that I look at. I'll immediately look at sales. And then the question I'm almost always going to ask that CEO is, do you have that broken out? How do you make your money? Correct? So if you are a construction client, is that industrial construction? Is that residential? If it's residential, are you doing new kitchens? Are you doing new bathrooms? Break out every way you can break out the sales so that I can understand how this company makes the money. Traditionally, they don't do that. So that's almost instantly you're telling like, give me the data. Okay. I need to see who and what you sell to so that I can go solicit to them. Right. And if I don't know what I sell, I don't know I sell kitchens and baths. What I know is I do $400,000 in construction last year. Good. What did I do? Oh, I did 380,000 in kitchen and baths. So now my marketing and my sales better be towards kitchen and baths, right? The 80-20 laws. So these are just places that you're going to go. So that's just on that side of the P&L, right? That's before we ever cross over into then the expenses. Then you go over to the expenses, you look at things like I just said, the payroll. Is that within the 30 to 50% of your sales? No, it's not. Highlight that yellow, need to ask a question. probably going to fire somebody. So that was my first experience. And then all along the P&L, it's that simple. It really is. And generally when we work with someone, we've had this comment said to us multiple times. It's not correct, but it does help understand what we do. They've said to me that we help them understand Chinese in about 45 minutes. And I say it's Mandarin, actually. But that's, I mean, I've had 4 or 5 different clients say the exact same sentence. So it's like, it's stuck with me. I know it's not correct, but I understand, like, it definitely conveys the point. They're like, wow, I now look at this document so much differently. And as I say to my clients, if you only hired me for one session to go through your P&L, you're never going to unlearn what I just told you. Never.
Yeah.
So, we kind of feel like you can't even pay us enough for what we do, because once we show that CEO that, they don't unlearn it. And it's super easy to follow. There's nothing hard. We don't believe we do anything difficult. Nothing that we do is actually difficult. We just follow the rules.
No, yeah, and as a human being, I think human nature is that when you don't know something, you kind of avoid it, right?
Correct.
You're keeping it on the back end, or it's so funny when clients come and ask, or I was referred to them, and they're looking to purchase a commercial real estate building, or they're looking to acquire a new company. A lot of times that sequence of thought patterns never even entered their mind in the evaluation process of, can they service the debt? No, hey, I do $22 million a year. I should be able to buy an $8 million,
Right.
building. Maybe not. But,
Right. Right.
the bottom line, and like you said, if the team around them, the CPA, the attorney, the CFO, possible service, and those types of, and the great banker, aren't in line of teaching that business owner, it's kind of almost by happenstance that you even get to 7 figures. And then you multiply that number to 8 or 9 figures, right? So it's interesting. So your personal practice, the practice of being a consultant, right? I think the GoFCO channel can really, take refuge in. All right, where did Shelley kind of start to be able to put processes and things that now are implementation things that you go with clients? So if a new client comes in, what are some of the things that you just kind of ABC for them? And then is your, revenue cycle yourself for the company, is it on retainer? Is it on a monthly subscription? How do you do your business for a revenue cycle?
It's Stacey, not Shelley.
Sorry,
That's okay.
Stacey.
That's
Yeah.
okay. In terms of, I think the onboarding, as you said, like how they come in the beginning, is that there's an onboarding in terms of, we work, the most popular program is our CEO's onboarding program. And they basically, if they come in under that, guys, they get the onboarding and all the services. And I ask them to at least make a 3-month commitment. And they sit with me once a week. And generally, as I said before, we start with a message map, no matter where the company is at, and the P&L. So those are 2 things that literally, if they've agreed to start doing business with me, they get me the P&L information, or the other people that are in the organization get that to us. And then usually the very first sit down meeting is the message map. There's been certain occasions where been brought in, and we've been brought in for crisis consulting. Not often, but we have, and it's actually really fun. And we liked it a lot. But I will say, here in Tulum, some of that stuff I think is less frequent, because, a lot of that stuff with crisis is circumstance of you being right there at the right time. But there's really we've done mediation. So, I mean, I don't know if it's possibly my own skill sets that allows me to cross into some other places and spaces that other consultants don't traditionally or can't, but we have a wide range of places that we can play. And I think that's the other reason we're able to retain our clients for a long time. Yeah, they start with the soundboarding, but a lot of our clients are with us for 5, 6, 7 years, because I sort of become, as we talked before, the co-CEO. That's ultimately the role throughout the 10 years, it's been the co-CEO. Then, does that take on the co-CMO role? Yes. Does that take on the co-CFO role? Yes. Not much the CTO. Now, I'm not so great in technology, but I play a doctor on TV. One of the most significant stories I have, when I started the consulting company, and the first client was a construction client. And I remember riding with the owner the very first day, and he's on the phone barking orders to one of his project managers about like, buy this many 2x4s and seven by eights and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? What? No way. And this kid's in Home Depot, it's loud. And I remember the kid calling him back, like going, hey, what exactly was that order? And I'm just watching all this. I'm like, this is insane. Like, this is not the way they're doing this, right? So another one of the project managers had come to me and said, have you heard of this thing called Slack? And I'm like, nope. I'm like, do the research, tell me about it. And he does. And behind the owners' backs, the COO who ran their operational team and the CEO who was the salesperson, we implemented this with all their project managers and their administrative person who did a lot of, I mean, she was really running so much stuff. And so we created the channels for each of the addresses that they were working on. And bing, bing, boom, they were in Slack. And then about a week, because I asked the owners and they said, absolutely not. They weren't interested. They were not interested. But because this was my anchor client and because it was a good friend of mine, I took the liberty to say, like, no, we're going to do this. And a week later, we let them know what we were doing and we showed them the channels. And probably 3 weeks later, the operations guy was playing golf about 3 or 4 days a week. As opposed to being at projects, going and verifying and telling people orders, like everything was there on Slack and you could type it and somebody could remember what you said and there weren't errors and mistakes. And then, they had a lawsuit years later and they were hashtag, XYZ project and boop, there it all was, like the order called for X wiring, right? Not, like, boop, here's the copy of the order from the apartment, multifamily, property. Here you go. So, a lot of times, as you said, CEOs do well despite themselves. And I do think good consultants have to be willing to come into a company and do the things that are best for the company. And that oftentimes is hard for some consultants because they may have a process or a book or a thing they want you to go study and purchase, which I don't believe in. I think that's, sorry, I don't think that's fair. I work for all those Fortune 100 companies. We instilled a lot of the consultants that operate like that, and they didn't do a single thing to help any of us, not once, never, ever, ever. And I can name you a million different programs we were taken through. The Oz, you name them, we were taken through them. They didn't make our lives as the mid-management in those companies any better at all. And we were doing the real field fighting. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you're mid-level in these companies, you're doing the work. You're the one. And so when those consultants came in, it made me mad. I was mad. I was mad. And I saw the company waste millions, and I mean millions of dollars. And I did absolutely start this company in the vein of that, not to be that. I will be 93% faster. I will do things not like a therapist. We're going to help them. We're not going to wait 6, 8 months, years. If we can fix them in one session, we will. We will, even at our own expense.
I love that mindset because, right, I think Kevin O'Leary just recently was quoted on a kind of a short video that he's actually never used consultants, because of that same vein of things, right? So, did I lose you there? Hello? All right, so let me switch it up a little bit, actually. So, from a leadership perspective, it sounds like you've run the gamut in corporate America. You were in that middle management space, and then you made it up to the CEO level as well. So, but now you're on your own, right? And a lot of people in Go for CEO community, we're talking about that small to medium-sized business growing to that 7-figure and 8-figure level. Leadership is a big deal. So I know that you can share and expand on that since you had almost 5,000 people under you at one point throughout your career. What was that like from an individual standpoint, having a new consultancy business? And over the years, did you use 1099 contractors? Have you been able to bring in employees? Like, what is your mix and style within I'm Not Mad at You Consulting?
For the consulting company, we're primarily what they say is a solopreneur, I think, where we've consulted with different 1099 employees and contract labor. And we had an employee we called employee number one, but it was really a mentor situation. He was a 19-year-old, incredible, young person who had not had a lot of exposure. And I said, look, you can do social media things. Like all the things I'm going to teach you are things that you will want, see if you like it. And then if you want to study something like this. So we said we had employee number one, but we primarily have had contract labor and different people that we worked at. But at the same time, where we're at with this consulting is, I'm the product as I would like it to be. And I think there are processes that we teach that are certainly scalable, but there's been no real effort to like have the consulting be done in another way or capacity, because typically the people that want to talk to us want to talk to me.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I mean, it's a different genre. Like,
That's not for everyone. Like, I don't recommend most businesses be set up that way. And, like at some point, like, is my business really scalable? And I'm not sure I ever cared. But it wouldn't be what I would say is for the long term. This isn't how I would consult if somebody wanted a longer term business problem, because I would tell you like how you want those processes to be able to be done by anybody, which I say we have them, but we have yet to really test out whether the magic is in the user or if is the magic in the process. I'd like to think it's in the process.
100%. I would agree with you. It's in the process. I mean, obviously, ultimately, depends on how your business is structured. That do you want to sell it? Is it something that you'd like to exit? If you never want to exit, then your own being the brand and being the strategy, and there is some limitations. Obviously, like a good doctor, if they hurt their hands and they're a surgeon, that's not a good thing. So,
Fair enough.
so
I mean, and you're right. I remember when I went to my financial planner and told her what I was planning to do and sort of, how I was going to, use money. And because again, as I said this, I started a business when I was 27 years old. And unfortunately, we did lots of successful things, but due to events and circumstances, as I'm sure all of us know, it was not successful. But part of the reason it wasn't successful is because in my mind, I thought I could be successful in 9 or 10 months. And so I did not allocate finances and, the time probably at 15 or 18 months. And I do tell that to people, like, if you're going to go do this, you need to have at least 2 years of, money, and not just money to live on, but enough money that you can live on and properly spend the money that you need to spend on getting a business up and running. And that's usually the part where people sort of get it a little short, do 6 months or 9 months or 10 months. And then what happens is they're at 9 months and the business is not where they need it to be. And it's where you would be telling that person you need to spend money. And that's at the place where they're the most desperate and not usually in a place to be comfortable spending money. And I can speak from my own experience. About a year and a half in, I was in that very position of like, oof, is this going to make it? Am at a stall here. How do I get this to the next level? And I did exactly what I would tell anybody to do, and I doubled down on my marketing spend, and fortunately in the right places and with activity, that was successful. And that within like 3 to 4 weeks, we had 7 new clients in 8 days or something just wild. But we spent money and went after it at a
yeah.
very, very difficult time. And I would say lots and lots of small businesses face that very same moment. And oftentimes they're going to go and choose the tread water instead of, nope, you got to dive from the deep end and, pick wise, choose wisely, soldier. But you're probably going to have to go make some type of investment to, purvey the business that you need to keep the thing going.
Yeah, I mean, look, bootstrapping is real. Getting debt from an SBA perspective is real. Investors are real. So there's always going to be a burn rate. And I think, yeah, people underestimate burn rates, not only to live your life, because if you are already, an individual with a life, with expenses, with a mortgage, with a car payment, with eating luxuries and all these, entertainment lifestyles, that all costs money already.
Correct.
But I love the way that you said it. Expenses are great and maybe you've saved that up, but that's not everything because you haven't even tapped into the business expenses and the things that it'll take to grow your business. So I love it. I love it. So, obviously, as you built this brand and over the last, 15 years, 10, 15 years, created this genre of different industries, where have you found, I guess, a real passion within this, right? Is it mostly because you align yourself and lock arms with that CEO and become that co-CEO? Is it you found like, man, I really love the marketing aspect or the ideation side of that beginning discovery channel side of things? Where is it that you have fallen in love with?
I mean, I like everything we do. I really, really do. I will tell you that doing the message map when we first bring in a client, it's extraordinarily powerful. And when you're defining their why, I can tell you probably 80% of the people that I have done this process with, men and women, cry. It's that powerful. In traditionally, number one, when you ask them the why, it's never the first, second, third, or fourth why they give you. So usually by the time you get to a really good why, they cry. And like if they've cried, it's worth the why. And that I enjoy tremendously because it allows an owner to really visually see their company. They've kind of written words and they've crafted a company or they've had a company, but in this process, we do it on a whiteboard, and so it's in one visual look that you see the tagline of your company and the what and the how and the where, and you're like, wow, that's the whole story behind this company. And as I said, you go through the why is the last thing we do, and it's very emotional. I dig doing that. I also just as much love getting those P&Ls on my own before I'm even working with them and like getting in there on the Excel. I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. I'm a numbers nerd. So I enjoy the heck of taking their 2 years of P&L, and I actually take the time to manually put it in the, typically when you get it from an accountant, it comes like horizontally like this. I actually put it, I mean vertically, and I put it horizontally. I literally just flip the numbers and type them in. But as I said, when I'm typing them in, you actually start seeing the aberrational numbers like, whoop, that one looked wrong. So you already are asking questions without even talking to them and writing down like notes, notes. There's, and then on the other side of that is the results. It's really fun. I mean, we've grown ROI 645%, 700. I'm like, it's insane. Like the numbers speak for themselves for what we've done. So I'm not gonna lie, that's my trophy. Every single time, we grew sales 725%, grew the pipeline six. It's always triple digits. We don't do like, I mean, we're not traditionally 20, 10%. We go big. But that's because we're so involved in their company and their brand that we're not just doing one thing or the other. And I think a lot of times consultants sort of come in and say, we're going to come sort of the financial side, and that's usually financial tech nerds. And they don't have a real good ability to take that financial information and then say like, okay, here's how I would articulate an idea to you as a construction dude. That would make sense. Like you should use Slack, right? That dude's not going to put himself in a position to even ride with the owner for a day or a week to probably even know that those communication issues were happening, right? The other thing we do is we talk to every employee in the company traditionally. That's tons of fun because they tell you everything, especially if you can get their confidence in 5 or 6 minutes of starting that meeting. You're going to be told all the ways you could make the company. And usually, as I say, the employees of a company do know the answers to fix that company. It's that it's really difficult for the employees to convey that to the owners because, to be fair, you should never be completely honest with them and they should never be completely honest with you. And I mean that in the most kind way, but it is true. A CEO can never tell you the full truth. They just can't. They can't. They have to convey confidence. They have to let you see strength. I mean, that's generally a better way to run a company. And you as an employee, you really shouldn't be telling them everything about you. I mean, like, you are an employee, you're not a best friend traditionally. And then, in the small and mid-sized businesses, sometimes that can get crossed because they hire friends, family, whatever. But I try to convey to them, like, you should run this as tight as you possibly can because that is where the success usually happens, right? But there's not much that I do I don't appreciate and enjoy because I recognize that anybody that's willing to ask for my help has already been vulnerable and allowed themselves the invasive process. And if they'll do that, I know for sure that I can help them. And if I can't, I know for sure if there's ever a scenario where I wouldn't be able to help the company, I will tell them. I'm not That's not a pride thing for me. It's the same thing I tell when I give sales advice and I'm working with, a lot of the sales teams. I'm like, listen, you're never, ever going to get in trouble for telling somebody you don't know the answer. Never, never. And in fact, a good salesperson like absolutely doesn't involve themselves in something they're not certain about, but they stop and say like, I'm going to get the answer for that. As I think I mentioned, I have an engineering client and we're bringing on a business development person. And as I said to that person, I'm like, the candidates that we've been interviewing, like, you're not going to have to understand engineering that well. Not really. You're not going to be selling all the ins and outs of engineering. What you do need to believe in is the confidence of this company to do the engineering that you go tell people that we're going to do. That's what you have to believe. That's about the level of engineering you need to understand that we do aquatics, we do MEP, and we do structural, and that's what you'll need to understand. And you're going to be looking for jobs. But you get into the conversation about engineering will never really happen. And if you should, you go, I don't know. But what I will do is get the answer for you, or I'll get you in touch with the person that can tell you the correct information. So I believe that on the sales hat, like, you're never ever going to fail in the arena of like if you don't know something in any capacity. But I do think it's incumbent upon us to get the answers, right? If you're in the sales role, you go get the answer. And then the best thing about that is as a salesperson, you have the opportunity to show that person that you're a follow-up person. Oopsie. And in fact, there's been certain cases where our leaders told us to purposely find something when you were having a meeting that you made sure that you had to like, not just like, I'll follow up with you with notes and like that, but they asked you something or you got yourself in a commitment of like, I'm going to go get information for you, seek something for you, and make sure that I return that information as I told you I would. So there's so many little tricks and trades of, as I think it's Jesse Seitzer, he says, winning the meeting, like winning any type of conversation you're in and being appealing to people or relatable to people. So we wear a lot of hats as a consulting company. We really do. And I do think we fall outside the normal parameters because we've been told go focus on one thing or the other. But again, if you're going to help an entire company, you have to be able to probably help the entire company, whether it be in human management, whether it be in accounting, whether it be in marketing, whether it be in business development. And I do think I'm very fortunate that I have had a life and a career and circumstances that have helped me kind of navigate so many different things that have been brought to me by my clients. And we have been remarkably successful, but that's usually because they listened to the advice. The ones that didn't, no good, no good.
They get cut off. I love it. I mean, so look, a lot of nuggets in that share, right? Go for CEO community. You listen to something that's very powerful. Is someone taking their insights, going deep into different areas of your business, operations, scaling, finance, leadership, business development, all these types of things. Obviously, the verticals within each and every business, and you take a consultant like I'm not mad at you consulting, and the powerful space that Stacey is in and what she's been able to develop, and you create a brand and a business out of it. So as we finish up our interviews, we always go through CEO, which is client experience for C. E is for engagement, and that could be with employees, with vendors, with clients, and how do you engage with them and do things with them to engage. And then O is operational excellence, which you've touched on a little bit as well. So let's start with that C for client experience. 60 seconds on value proposition, or why I'm not mad at you consulting can be where people want to come and do their business with. So what is the 60-second value proposition?
Well, to start and end, we make people and companies better, and we have processes and systems where we're able to get inside of the company in a very quick way. In fact, 83% faster than other consulting companies to quickly assess your challenges, create solutions, and instantly within a week or two be working on the problems. And as I said earlier, we don't sell you books, courses, anything that's not involved directly in your business, we're not touching.
I love it. I love it. Well, you said a very important word in my book coming out, the 4A formula. Assess is the first chapter, because ultimately everything you do, faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, the 5 F's I talk about in the book, you have to assess where you're at. So I love that you brought up that word assess, one of my favorite, shamelessly plugging my book, The 4A Formula,
Absolutely.
untangle any challenge and think like a CEO. So engagement.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Engagement, from a vendor, from a 1099 contractor, from the clients that you have, and do you do retreats? Are you into like gifts? What are things that you do as Stacey Bullman and, the CEO of your own business to engage with the people that you work around and with?
I don't do retreats. In fact, I left them all. I left the country. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I had to find clients that were actually really comfortable with my other life. Do you know what I mean? Like, as a consultant, I'm not traditional. I'm not sitting there in an office. I'm not sitting there, kind of more formal. So I think the clients have to sort of be comfortable with what my other aspirations are in life and the other things I do. I'm a DJ. I live here in Tulum. I'm very spiritual. So like there's a lot of, I'm an interesting character. So the engagement I think is that personally the engagement is the results. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, they stay with us because we deliver results. We tell them that we're gonna deliver results on your P&L, no other place, like, and we do.
I
So
love it.
it's that's the engagement we need is to deliver against the sales revenue.
Ultimate, I know GC, I follow a guy named Uncle Grant Cardone. He talks about, ultimately, if I deliver a way of making money and it really hits your hands, it's in your bank account, you're going to be the happiest as possible. And
Sure.
you said it, right? If you improve that P&L, improve that bottom line, and it goes right to their pocketbook, that in and of itself is engagement. So it's pretty powerful. So operational excellence, from a person that now is in Tulum and living your best life in different areas like you talked about, what are some of the things that you are using as tools, right? Is AI become a little bit more prominent? Is there a certain software that you've developed or are using that you really like? That's what we mean by operational excellence. What are you doing to kind of make sure that I'm not mad at you is, flowing and processing the right way?
We're definitely tapping into AI without a doubt. And we're certainly talking to our companies about the importance of tapping into it in the different various ways you can. Um, and as I kind of forgot the second part of the question, but
No, just the tools that you're using at I'm not
sure.
mad at you, right? So, are you using certain like HubSpot or are you using other CRM, stuff like that?
Yeah, CRMs, I mean, HubSpot, I mean, we also work with all of our clients in terms of each client I've got is working on a different CRM. So again, it's more the advocation of them in terms of I'm not mad at you sophistication. The CRM, I'm not, I mean, I do have HubSpot, but it's also in my mind. I mean, we don't have 10,000 clients. We're not trying to get 10,000 clients. We're pretty, so our resources that we have to tap in are probably a lot less sophisticated than the clients that we work with in the areas that we are very familiar with and we advise to. But as again, I have a pretty simplistic business model here, which was the whole plan. So yeah, I'm playing with AI to create better content, to be, honestly, to create better content for I'm not mad at you because the process that we created when I started the company in terms of how we assess the business it's P&Ls, it's a WOT template, it's the message map. Like we already have the tools in place of what we do. And now in terms of our business development and the audience that we're looking for, we're only sophisticating the work that we do in terms of using AI to help us create better content and use the algorithms in our favor to talk to people that are looking to be better. But as I said, I'm not mad. You have to understand it on a much deeper level because of the level of sophistication of the clients that we're working with and the needs that they have. So it's very fluid, as we say. I definitely think, like I said, the number one thing right now is certainly AI in terms of the conversation. As far as the tools I use, yes, I use that. I'll also say I also use meditation and some other things. I work out. I do a lot of other things because, these days there are a lot of things to pull at us, to make us, just to distract us. As a leader, I think it's critical that the leader is, as balanced in their life as they can be in terms of if you're going to lead people, guide people, direct people, you want to, not just the P&L looking really good is one thing, but I also think you need to have your mind sharp, your mindset. I think that that's something that leaders oftentimes neglect, but are you working out? Are you meditating? Are you doing whatever? Are you dancing, running, walking? I don't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, but are you doing things to make sure that you are fit so that you aren't whatever it is, making rash decisions, losing your temper, whatever the case may be, because you're going to be tempted to be frustrated all day long by the challenges that running a business is going to throw at you. And it is. You don't ever pick up the phone and it's like, everything's great. Nothing for you to do here. I say that to you. You're never going to get that email or that phone call. Almost everything you're going to receive is going to require your action, your direction, your guidance, your counsel. So if your mind is not good, you're not going to make good decisions. You're not going to grow and be better.
I love
So,
it. 5 F's, ladies and gentlemen: faith,
yeah.
family, fitness, finance, and fun. Right? You got to mix in that fun.
In
What's
fact,
that?
can you add another one? In facts.
And facts. I love it. I love it. So the 6 F's. Yes. Awesome. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Stacey, thank you so much for being a part of the Go for CEO channel. And, you brought a lot of great wisdom and knowledge, mixing that corporate background into an individual, business that you started. A cool name, just standing out, being different. What are some of the ways that people can get a hold of you? What are ways that you enjoy connecting with, potential clients and people that are looking out to consult with you?
I'm Not Mad at You isn't all the traditional places. So we're on the gram and the Facebook. www.imnotmadatyou.com is pretty much the foundation of the hub where you'll find all of our content centrally located, case studies about me and the company, and all the good things that we've been able to do to make companies and people better.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey, Go for CEO channel. If I didn't say this at the beginning, I'm bad at it, but I need you to subscribe. All right. This is part of the hour that we bring to you. And then we'll have shorts of Stacey's little snippets in 60 seconds of the nuggets that she shared with you. But let's grow this channel. Let's grow this community. The book is coming out here, coming out soon. The 4A formula: untangle any challenge and think like a CEO. It comes from a lot of the CEOs and founders and entrepreneurs that I've had on the podcast, but also comes from my own genuine background, owning a business, selling it in 2009, becoming a commercial banker, and all the stuff. So excited for you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Check out Stacey and go to IamNotMadAtYou.com. Thank you so much, Stacey, for being on the Go for CEO channel.
Thank you, John.